You said that sometimes you have a lot of queries at the same time, so I can imagine you can batch them to some extent. Does it make sense to use GPU here? Or because you're calculating distance, usually it is by multiplication of vectors.
It definitely makes sense to use GPU here, and GPU is good for GPU is especially good for brute force search because it's highly parallel, extremely highly parallel. So if you want if your application, I'm a biomedical company and I'm using a vector database for pharmaceutical purposes, I really like to have exact search, and then GPUs are great. And one thing that I want to emphasize is that vector databases are not just a database, right? They really sit at the intersection of AI ML. They really sit at the intersection of modern machine learning and data infrastructure. And they are very compute, unlike a MongoDB or unlike a Postgres, right? They are very compute heavy databases. You do a lot of math in them, and a lot of this math is just tensor multiplication, is vector multiplication, right? Computing distances between vectors. And what that entails is that kind of stuff is perfect for GPUs. And for Milvus in particular, with the release of 2.3, actually, some folks on at NVIDIA actually contributed the GPU accelerated version of Milvus, the GPU acceleration portion of our indexing strategy to us. So yeah, with Milvus 2.3, you do get GPU acceleration. You do get the capability to use GPUs to build your index and to query your index as well.
Do you remember what is the boost, like the magnitude of it? I think it all depends on the type of data. Like I did my bachelor thesis, but it was 15 years ago. We've been coding algorithm on GPU, but at the time it was a new thing. So I remember how fragile it is. Depends on the size. So, but expected upgrade boosts.
It's really dependent on your data. It's dependent on your GPU, and it's dependent on the type of index that you use as well. And I don't want to give any numbers. You do definitely get a boost, a pretty significant boost. I don't want to give any numbers right now because we're still doing some internal tests too. So Milvus 2.3, at the time of this recording at least, was just got released. So there are some, there's still some testing that we're doing. There's still some things that we're trying to figure out from that perspective.
Is Milvus the first vector database out there that is introducing GPU support, or is it not necessarily new?
Actually, Milvus 1 is actually the first vector database to support GPU. So Milvus 1.x. And the reason why I like to separate Milvus 1.x and Milvus 2.x is because Milvus 1.x is meant to be more standalone. It's meant to be like a standalone instance, more compact, whereas Milvus 2 is cloud native. So we use S3 as the underlying object store, and we give you the capability to expand and contract your cluster using Helm, using Kubernetes. So Milvus 1 is actually the first vector database with GPU support. Milvus 2 is not the first vector database with GPU support. It's actually its predecessor, Milvus 1.x, is what beat it to the punch, so to speak. But yeah, I would say aside from that, I'm fairly certain we are the only vector database that supports GPUs, and Milvus, and if you don't include Face as a vector database. So I consider Facebook AI similarity search to be more of a vector search library. I know a lot of folks, listening to this podcast may have used it at some point as well, and less of a database. So when it comes to a database, you want a lot of those traditional database features. You want things like caching, both horizontal and vertical scalability, and at the same time, you'll want consistent SDKs, consistent APIs. Right. So there's a lot of vector search and vector indexes. They're only just one component of a broader vector database. Without getting too far off topic here, yeah. When it comes to GPU support, I would say when it comes to GPU support for a vector database, Milvus 2, if you exclude Milvus 1, is probably the first.